Okay, I keep turning it on and off. Thank you. So are there any individuals signed up for public comments?
Chair Howerton, we do have one individual, DeWarren Langley. He is virtual. If you give me one moment, I'll get him loaded.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Langley, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Howerton, Vice Chair Jacobs, members of the Board of County Commissioners, as well as County Manager Dr. Sowell. This morning, over the past few weeks, I've been listening to the work sessions for the upcoming budget, and there's been some concerning data points that I have not heard discussed as you all are looking at allocating money to address the critical needs in our community. And one of the things that I want to reference is our continued need here at the Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation. And over the past few months, the Durham Police Department has shown data where Black boys and young men are overwhelmingly affected by gun violence, with 95% of the victims and perpetrators being from this group. Additionally, academic achievement and discipline data from Durham Public Schools indicate Black boys have the lowest percentage of meeting minimum grade level proficiency and college and career readiness, as well as the highest short and long-term suspension rates since 2015. In fact, Black males have the lowest grade level proficiency and college and career readiness of any other group in the school system. These statistics emphasize the urgent need for high-quality, measurable programs to support Black boys' academic success and prepare them for college and career readiness. The recent surge in gun violence in Durham, especially among Black males, coupled with the unprecedented disruption in education and workforce due to COVID-19, will only widen the access, academic, and opportunity gaps for this group. The Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation has been consistently offering a comprehensive range of programs, services, and mentorship for boys and young men of color. The foundation focuses on academic achievement, life skills, academic and college preparation support, career exploration, workforce readiness, and trauma-informed support to equip boys and young men with the skills, knowledge, experience, and network needed to succeed in a competitive workforce. To continue providing these essential services, the foundation requires stable and long-term funding, which is what we're seeking from Durham County as well as from the city of Durham. By providing this longitudinal guidance, support, and proactive academic leadership and professional development services, we aim to address the systemic issues facing Black boys and young men in Durham to create a more equitable and just society for all. So I'll be again reaching out to each of you and hope you all will make this investment so that we will be able to see Black boys and young men succeed in Durham like every other group. Thank you.
Thank you, Dewan. Are there any other comments?
No, ma'am. No one else has signed up to speak virtually or in person.
Thank you. Are there any agenda adjustments? You want to go ahead and do that one for the resolution?
Sorry, can you give me 1 second? I have a bagel in my mouth.
Well, so while she's getting ready, just to remind the public, this is our work session on June 5th, 2023. Just getting that date on for the record. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would like us to make an adjustment to the agenda to add a resolution honoring the late Conan Morgan to our consent agenda for us to approve and be able to send to the family and read it in its entirety at our Monday regular session meeting.
Second. I don't think okay, we can't do a motion without, we have to do the other part. Is it a, we have to do a motion to add to the agenda? We don't have to do a motion, do we?
It's just an agenda.
Okay, so we have to do the first part of it first before we'll do the motion then.
Move to suspend the rules
Second.
about voting.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second to, what are we doing? We're moving.
So now I've made a motion to add the resolution honoring the late Conan Morgan to our consent agenda for full reading at our Monday regular session.
So that's the motion. And we had a second.
Commissioner Lenz?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second to add the resolution to the agenda, a consent agenda. So at this point, Commissioners, we have 17 consent items on the agenda, and I will ask the manager if she will read through our items and allow Commissioners to ask whatever questions or make comments.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. We will begin with Agenda Item 230296, Budget Amendment Number 23BCC 00094, and Capital Project Amendment Number 23CPA 00022, appropriating $900,000 of sewer utility fund balance and transferring those funds to a new Capital Project Train 3 Rehabilitation SE062, as well as provide approval of sole source exemption for the purchase of rotors and gearboxes in the amount of $817,993, with a not-to-exceed total project budget of $900,000. 230325, approval of purchase of goods contract with Command Sourcing, Inc. for the purchase and installation of a millimeter wave scanner for the new Durham County Youth Home via the North Carolina Sheriff's Association Procurement Program. 230344, execution of a service agreement with Cure Violence Global in the amount of $79,750 to provide training and technical assistance to the Community Intervention and Support Services Department. 230345, execution of a service agreement with West Staff Workforce Solutions, LLC, for temporary staffing in the amount of $236,527.20 for Community Intervention and Support Services Department to support programmatic efforts. Yes.
I'm sorry, I did have a question about item 23-0344. So I know this is a regular contract that we have with Cure Violence. Do we keep data on the participation? I know Crystal used to, in her previous role, we would track how many people in DSS would participate in the various trainings and things like that. So I'm just wondering if we are tracking that data, and also I know you had, maybe it was just in a conversation, mentioned that you were also going to be looking at how we do kind of ongoing training here. I guess I was wondering, this is important to have the outside training, but just what kind of training are we doing here as well, was one of my questions.
And so, yeah, this training is in relations to, and there's ACMPers. So this is in relation to the model, the Cure Violence model. In addition to this training, we are also formulating and going to make sure that we insert training, Durham County training, as it relates to the policies and procedures that must be administered to and complied with here. But I'll allow ACMPers.
Yes, good morning. I also see the director for the Community Intervention and Support Services Department here. And this training in particular, yes, is for the Cure Violence Global Model, which is the approach that Bull City United uses. And we, every year, since the inception of the program, we've used this this training. And initially, it was in public health. And now, of course, it's with the new department. So it's just transferring over to ensure that the group is following the model, understand they do data training, management training, staff training, and depending on if you're an outreach worker or a violence interrupter, you have some unique training for those positions as well.
And is it that every time there's a new person will participate, or even existing employees?
Absolutely. Each year, there's multiple trainings. There are booster trainings, and each time there is a new team member that comes on board. The training happens as they come on, so that no one's out doing the work without the training.
Okay. And I'm glad to hear, Madam Manager, that we're going to be doing some additional just Durham County policies. And I know the data analyst position is really important. Do we have that position yet? I know that was one that we were having trouble getting.
I'll have the director come on over here. And then, of course, we'll address the question about employee training with the county.
Good morning. So yes, my plan is to post the new data analyst position once the budget is approved, because I want to make sure that we don't have to post it then change it should the recommended budget be changed with the pay bands. So that will happen as soon as the county manager's budget is approved. That position, as well as our new community support manager position, will be posted at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for that. Next, we'll move to 230348. Approve the charter resolution reflecting the new organization name change of Central Pines Regional Council, formerly Triangle J Council of Governments, TJCOG. 230360. Approve an amendment of $12,212 to the West Staff contract to continue contracted administrative services, increasing the total contract amount to $52,211.98. 230361. Approve an amendment in the amount of $18,951 to the Select Group Staffing contract to continue the contracted services of a project manager, increasing the total contract amount to $303,750. 230362. Approve an amendment of $22,733.03 to the West Staff Staffing contract to continue the contracted services of a senior business analyst, increasing the total contract amount to $153,664.68. 230363. Approve an amendment in the amount of $12,822.60 to the West Staff Staffing contract to continue the contracted services of a temporary associate, increasing the total contract amount to $68,293.56. 230364. Approve an amendment in the amount of $11,200 to the Insight Global Staffing contract to continue the contracted services of an IS&T help desk technician, increasing the total contract amount to $47,600. 230365. Approve an amendment in the amount of $69,498 for a contract renewal with Open Sesame Incorporated. 230370. Updated fire protection services contracts with the Bahama, Lebanon, and Redwood Volunteer Fire Departments via my mic went out. that provide fire, rescue, and first responder services in Durham County, and contract extensions with the Eno and New Hope VFDs.
Mr. Jacobs?
Yeah, I know we're going to have a presentation from the Lebanon Fire Department today, but I did want to note when I read over the contract, there are a lot of responsibilities that our board actually has that I didn't realize that we really are supposed to be signing off on related to their ISO rating, the minimum staffing, delivery of services. So I do look forward to, I will save my questions related to that for the presentation. But I'm also concerned that there are going to be changes to the Eno and the New Hope Fire Department with the first responders that I found out about when I read our agenda items related to this, and that there are going to be changes in that service, which is related to these contracts. And I would just say that I mean, there's probably not time now, but I would have liked to have heard that also as a part of our budget discussions. If we're signing off on these contracts, then it's, you know, maybe we can hear. I know that it said in our materials that it was going to be presented in July, but I am concerned about those as well.
We can bring those forward, those presentations forward to you. Okay, 230387, accept the conveyance of a conservation easement from Triangle Land Conservancy for the permanent protection of the Newsome Tract, parcel 193212, a priority property in the Army Compatible Use Buffer ACUB area. Okay. 230388, request by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, NCDOT, for the addition of Summerwind Trail to the state-maintained secondary road system. 230390, award of construction contract for a bypass connection at Page Park Apartments Pump Station, IFB 23025, to Carolina Civil Works, Inc. 230391, award of the Aeration Basin 3 cleaning services for Durham County Triangle Wastewater Treatment Plant, RFP 23019 contract to Centergrove Central LLC. In 230392, budget ordinance amendment number 23BCCC 000093, transferring available unspent personnel funds among departments and functional areas to support personnel expenses through the end of fiscal year 2022-23. And Madam Chair, that concludes the consent agenda items.
Thank you, Manager Sowell. Any other questions regarding those consent items?
I have one. Madam Manager, is there any way we can get an update or a report from Bull City United for all of last year? I mean, I'm not going to ask it now. You know, we re-up in a contract for a model. We have other groups that are putting out reports about their outcomes. They've been around a year. I don't think they have outcomes. This has been around a decade. I just want to see what our report looks like. I am not asking for a presentation. I would like something emailed to me because we're using this model and I want to see how effective this model is. It's on the consent agenda. We're going to approve it, and we're doing a lot of staffing work for it. So at some point, I would appreciate that, but that's my only question. Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll move on down to our discussion items. The first one, 230342, is naming committee request for Lowell L. Seiler, former county manager, former county attorney. And we have our CEO here, Chief of Staff, I want to say CEO.
Just 'cause she does
Staff,
a lot of work.
staff to present this item to us this morning. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Chair Howerton, Vice Chair Jacobs, Commissioners, Madam Manager, and Attorney. We are presenting this presentation about the naming request for Lowell L. Seiler Lobby. I'll give you a little background first on what we have as a policy on our naming and renaming. Our policy was adopted by this board in August of 2016. The policy states that no entire building can be named for an individual, only features, spaces, rooms, or areas. And so that is critically important to know, especially for this request. The original request, as many of you may have seen, was that the entire building be named. And so after a consultation with the requesters, we were able to share with them that our policy does not allow for that and get a revised request. The authority to name, rename, or revoke, it lies with you all. Requests must be made via application, which we have and we provide to those who request that application. They're reviewed by our naming committee. The policy allows the manager to make the decision if a staff person or a committee reviews and makes the recommendation, and we've elected to have a committee which meets and to discuss all of these requests. The board reviews and approves the recommendation or makes its own recommendation. And once approved, the recommendation goes to public hearing to discuss and receive public comment. And following the public hearing, the board votes on the naming or renaming. Here I have listed the names of the members of the naming committee: our attorney, Alan Andrews, our chief communications officer, Deborah Craig Ray, our assistant county manager for community, sorry, I'm missing a word there, Mr. Julio Delgado, our Chief Human Resource Officer, Kathy Everett Perry, Chief of Staff, myself, and Clerk to the Board, Monica Wallace. So with this request, the original application was received February 3rd, 2023, and a revised application was received on March 2nd, speaking to what the original request was for the entire building. The request was submitted by the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People and the Beta Phi chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. The request is in honor of the first African-American Durham County attorney who served Durham County for over 36 years. The Lowell L. Seiler Lobby will be located on the first floor of Admin 2 at 201 East Main Street in Durham, per the request. This is the committee's recommendation that we do proceed with the naming of the lobby in that facility, that we will hang Lowell L. Seiler Lobby in that lobby space of Admin 2. It will hang above the photo. Like the BOCC photos that are hanging here in the chambers, you will have the photo, and then you see what we are recommending as the titling to go below that photo and a brass plaque to be mounted beneath. The naming we'd like to unveil at an event on July 14th, which is also his birthday. We think that would be appropriate. Here are the options for where we could hang the naming, the photo, and the brass plaque. Option 1 is when you first walk into Admin 2 on the far right doors, it's facing you directly. Option 2 is when you walk in on the right doors, it'll be on your right side. And option 3 is when you walk in, it'll be on your left side. And this is for your decision and discussion to decide where you'd like to see it hanging if you proceed with the recommendation. The next steps are that we will hold a public hearing on June 26th. Then we will have the final approval also on June 26th. If approved, we will proceed with the unveiling event to be held on July 14th.
Thank you, Ms. Trapp, for all the work that you've done around this. I know this has been a lot because we thought we had a naming policy, but we didn't have it all worked out. So thank all of you on the committee that has worked to fine-tune this naming policy so that when something comes up in the future, we have a policy in place. So thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions? Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you, Shannon. I really appreciate you starting out with just going over what the policy is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank the committee members for your work on this. And our job is to state our preference. I personally like option one. What's that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go back to the picture. Because I feel like when you walk in, you'll walk in the door and you'll see his portrait right there, and that everyone who goes in will walk past it, and it's just a nice central location. So that's my preference. I think also that just fitting it into that space looks like it won't get lost there visually. It'll be, it just looks like, to me, the perfect location. So that's my vote.
I agree. The right. Commissioner Burns. I want to make sure you said, I see lettering, so we're doing lettering and not a plaque, right?
Yes, there will be lettering that will say
Good.
Lower Elside Lobby.
Lettering looks way better, so that
Yes.
was my first question. I know I'm not the design person. I tend to agree with the recommendation. I was saying option one or option three, but yeah, I want everybody to have to pass by Lowell going in the building. So yeah, I'm with option one. Only because there's nothing over there at 3 and there's a TV. But yeah, if I would be good with either one, but option one works for me. Make sure the lettering go, He was an Omega.
Make it
Don't
nice
want
and
nobody
go.
mad.
Commissioner Long?
Thank you, Shannon, and the entire committee for all the work you've put into this. I think, option one would be a great way to honor Lowell. As Commissioner Jacobs mentioned, everyone being able to just see him right as they enter and know, and as they walk in, be able to stop, read it, have the space to read it also.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I'll say aesthetics is not my strong suit. I'm happy to defer to the four of you. I actually liked the wall on the left because I like that wooden, but the front and center makes sense to me too. As long as you all don't think there'll be distractions from the central point of honoring him with the video there, blah blah blahing, as people enter. But it seems like no one's really concerned about that. That was my only concern about having it front and center. I think front and center certainly makes sense, centralizing the point of honor for Lowell. I also think that lovely wall on the left. Anyway, thanks to the committee for bringing forward such great choices, really, truly, And I'm really glad we're making this decision to name the lobby, and I think we should rename the building too. I think Admin 2 is the worst name in America.
I do too.
But
I do too, Heidi. I do too. It doesn't mean anything. I agree with you. Several years ago, we did a bit of naming with Commissioner. That was one of our commissioners, and also Tommy Hunt.
We didn't name buildings out.
We didn't name buildings. We had a plaque. So we've done a little bit of naming, but not a whole lot. So this gives us the structure for going forward, and also with the committee being able to keep us in line as to how it's supposed to go. So we are really excited, and I see our attorney would like to say something.
Well, thank you, everybody, for all your comments. I will make a couple of observations along with your comments. This is not statutory. This is your policy.
Yes.
So know that you can make the policy be what you would like it to be.
Got it.
I'm new here, but when I first read the policy, I had observations about the policy.
Yeah.
The policy could be drafted better. It's fairly repetitive and could be cleaner and easier for your citizens. And it sounds like you may want to modify your policy for your current preferences. It's been some time. So if that is your spirit, consider conveying that to me or the committee, what thoughts you have, and we will incorporate what you desire. I think you got to it, but I believe one of the past namings was a part of our Memorial Stadium. I think there was a portion of that. I think probably the concern about naming an entire building is it limits you for the future. If in 2023 we name an entire building, if something momentous comes later, you're limited. So that might have been the motivation in 2016, I'm not sure. But you're free to you know, make of it what you will. But if you would be willing to convey, that will be very helpful to the committee. We can coalesce your thoughts.
Yeah, so far, I don't think the city or the county has been willing to name any whole building after a person, because I was thinking, is there any building named after anybody? Is there?
The school district policy saying not to name, buildings after people. And I at the time I was on board and I approved that policy. And the reasoning was just in 100 years from now, you never know what you might learn about someone. And, we've had that in our country. Of course, we know Lowell Thaler is beyond, repute. But nonetheless, just in general, that is why the school board did it, and maybe that was why I wasn't on the board when the county adopted that policy, but maybe that is why, and I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, I know we did the, one of the buildings after Minnie Fort Brown recently, but I haven't seen any other buildings that's been named after anybody within the city. So what I'm understanding you say, that there we might want to look at our policies to see if there are changes at some point. Is that what you're saying?
Why don't we do this? And I'll defer. Why don't we provide the policy to you so you can look at it? Mm-hmm. And any thoughts you have about changes that might need to occur, you can submit them.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Yeah, I know not everyone was on the board when this came up, but the main reason, there were a number of reasons that we maintained the policy of not naming buildings after people. First of all, the fact is that all of the buildings are funded by Durham County taxpayers. And the feeling that we shouldn't be taking taxpayer-paid buildings and just naming them for one person, and then also the difficulty of deciding who is appropriate to pick and choose was very fraught. And so I personally would not support changing that. I would support something like, admin 2 doesn't really tell you a lot about the purpose of the building. A more user-friendly name like County Services Building or something like that, I think is appropriate, like our Health and Human Services Building. But I very strongly would not support that part of our policy. So I think it's totally appropriate what we're doing with the lobby. I totally support that, but I think it's, look, we just renamed Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, to your point, Commissioner Carter, and often there's just, I think, a lot of issues around the whole process of doing that when it's a publicly funded building. But in terms of you wanting to clean up the policy, or you think make it more user-friendly, because the point is that the public should be able to read the policy online and clearly understand how to fill out the application. So if you feel like it could be made more understandable and more usable, then I would support that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burns?
I'll be quick. I will say I get it. I promise you I do. I can appreciate Fort Bragg and Fort Liberty. I do wish. I remember when people in the community said that they were going to bring forth this recommendation, and when they said they were going to send letters to each of the board members about this request. I remember being fully in support of it, and I can respect precedents, and I can respect that we have a policy, and I can appreciate a committee. But I also think that there's a reason why less than 2% of the statues in the United States are of women. There's a reason why less than 10% of government buildings are named after black people. I personally feel like there are days where we shouldn't be people of our time, but we should be people ahead of our time. So I would have been one of those people who said, yes, name the whole John Brown building after Lowell Thaler. I would have been full-throated with that. I get we're here now. I'm happy that Shannon did this research and did it this way. But we're also the same board that said we're going to do a hair discrimination ordinance. We're the same board that said we're not going to let people discriminate against folks in the LGBTQ community. So when we say why we do things, I really want people to understand that this is a special board, this is a special time. And if we want to change the rules, we can change the rules. And I don't want us to be kind of sort of pinned down by them when whoever comes to sit in these chairs next might not have our values. And as far as the taxpayer dollar argument, the schools are paid for by taxpayer dollars, and some of the buildings that the school, like the mini Fort Brown as the example, that was for example. So I don't want that to be the thing that holds us back in the future, saying, well, this is how it's always been done. If we sit and continue to do things the way it was always, like not one woman would be sitting up here. So I do just want to throw that out there for food for thought, not necessarily for this, but as we move forward and we think about what kind of legacy we want to build, what kind of stamp we want to leave on this community, I want to know that we left all of it on the floor and we weren't kind of sort of pulled down by these draconian ideologies of what we should or should not be doing. And that's all I got.
Just one more thing, and again, thanks to the committee that's making this happen. I've been waiting for this for a while, so I'm excited about it happening. And one of the other thing that might be interesting is to include the Cultural Advisory Committee in the conversation of naming, because they will be looking at all of our historical buildings and monuments and all those things that we want to be historical. So that might be a way to do it as well. That's it.
I think Commissioner Carter raised a good point about the TV, and I guess that wooden wall is really pretty. I don't know if, in terms of the spatial part of it, if the picture would get lost in it because it's kind of a big space. I guess that it is a pretty wooden wall. I can see why you would say that. But so I don't know if the committee members have any thoughts on that.
Well, I will say that that wall, we are presenting as if assuming that all people are walking in on the right side and the door that says enter. Of course, sometimes people go in on the left, and on the left, that wall is on the left side. Yeah. It's also the wall that leads to the, as does the other right facing, but it's the wall that you'll see immediately when you come off the elevators, because it's the wall, when you come off the elevators, it's right there on your right. So there is good reasoning for that also being a location.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a little extra and ask if a sample picture could be taken for us of like holding a frame at each of option 1,
That's a really good
2,
idea.
and 3, so we can just visually picture what it'll look like.
We will have that done for you.
Thank you.
We'll get that done.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think of the right side because when people walk in that building, the first thing they do is they look toward the right.
Right.
That's just an automatic for folks to. There. Do you look to your left? You lean left. I'll just say maybe 80% of the people lean right, and maybe just that would be my thinking is 80% lean. So, but what do you need from us today so that we can have this on the agenda to move forward with your timeline?
Monica, can you allow this? I'll show you again what the next steps are.
Okay.
And so this is just for information for you all today, and so that you can start to think through what your thoughts are. We'll get that additional photos to you, okay, Commissioner. And then the public hearing will go forth on June 26th. You'll make your final decision on June 26th, and then we will start planning for the 14th event pending the passing of this recommendation.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
All right. The next item, Commissioners, is 230395, Lebanon Fire Volunteer Fire Department Board of Directors Report to the Board of Commissioners. And this is a Lebanon director. Is he here?
Or is he online? He's online.
Okay. So let's see who's online.
Jason is online, and okay, got a couple of people here.
to report on this. So during the May 24, 23 budget work session, the Board of Commissioners requesting that the Lebanon Fire Department Board of Directors attend the work session to present information regarding its decision to terminate the employee contract with the County of Durham and discuss the plan to provide ongoing fire protection services to the residents of Lebanon Fire District. One or more representatives from the fire department from that are here today and online. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Chair Howerton. Thank you for the opportunity to address you and the rest of the commissioners. If it pleases the board, I would first like to read a statement from the Lebanon Fire Department Board of Directors.
Would you say your name and?
My name is Kyle Hester. I'm a board member and assistant chief of Lebanon Fire Department.
Thank you.
The Lebanon Volunteer Fire Department has provided fire and rescue services to the residents of the Lebanon Township for 52 years. This past year, our organization received the first Class 3 ISO rating for a volunteer fire department serving Durham County residents. This rating is the lowest, thus the best rating for those living in any rural fire protection district within the county, giving them the best insurance rate possible. Since being organized, our department has used a combination of methods to meet the needs of our community. Starting as an entirely volunteer organization, part-time employees were added in the late 1980s. In 1997, full-time employees were added through a partnership with Durham County. This partnership has allowed funding to pass through Durham County, permitting our employees to enter the state retirement system. The partnership did not and has never included any funding or financial subsidy from the Durham County General Fund. Currently, Lebanon is the only Durham County Fire Department using full-time employees for protection within the county other than the city of Durham. Funding for our fire department comes solely from taxes collected on our behalf from within our rural fire protection tax district, along with some minimal donations. Unlike Durham County government, which essentially has an unlimited taxing authority, North Carolina general statute limits the maximum rural fire protection tax rate at 15 cents. With the Durham County partnership, Lebanon's Board of Directors has routinely consented to the compensation model set forth for employees as recommended by Durham County Human Resources and adopted in the county's annual budget process. We have never been privy to the pay and class decisions, nor have we had a clear knowledge of some of the extra benefits that we have been required to pay, specifically for the current budget year. Our board adopted a balanced budget based on the salary and benefits information provided to us by the county budget office. Halfway through the year, we were informed that the county would need to hold additional funding from our monthly operational disbursement to offset unbudgeted retention bonuses, longevity payments, and higher than expected merit increases. Although the compensation model has proven to be very lucrative for the staff, the negative impact on the department's operational budget has now been realized. In order for the Lebanon Volunteer Fire Department to continue to serve the community and stay financially sound, this decision has been made to sever only the employment portion of our contract with the county. This decision will allow the board of directors to manage employee costs directly to ensure a long financial future for the fire department. We believe that under this reorganization, we will be able to fairly compensate our full-time workforce and potentially add additional staff while controlling costs. Additionally, we are also confident that we will continue to exceed the county's minimum staffing requirements as directed in the contract for fire protection. Each of our current employees has been notified that a position is available for them if they choose to transition to the Lebanon entity. Please understand that as a board, we serve our community. We did not come to this decision lightly. We truly value all the employees and members of Lebanon who work to keep our community safe. Simply put, this is a business decision predicated on our long-term financial stability, ensuring that all of our members, volunteer, part-time, and full-time, will continue to have a department to serve with and work for. Thank you.
Thank
you. Who's next?
Good morning, Dwayne Brenson, Assistant County Manager, Community Safety. Is that all the report from the Lebanon Board?
Yes, sir.
So at this, Mr. Fire Marshal, any comments you want to add regarding the situation before we take questions from the board?
Thank you. Jason Shepard, Fire Marshal with the Office of Emergency Services. Working closely with the Board of Directors, they did inform us in April that due to the lack of 1% increase in tax-based revenue, so the district itself is not necessarily growing like other districts in Durham County. And so they made the decision that they needed to look at alternate means to supporting their fire department, which means to terminate the agreement with Durham County. Director Groves and I have worked, once we made notice, we were made notice by the board of the fire department that we worked with the Director Everett Perry and to make sure that the employees got all the information they need internally. We're also working on strategies inside of Durham County to offer any opportunities that they can to apply for jobs within Durham County that allows them to stay in a local government retirement system. Upcoming internally, next month we are looking to hire for EMS paramedic class, number 36 recruit class. So we have worked with each employee and allowing them the opportunity to apply if those positions come available, also providing them opportunities to assist with resume writing and all the services that we allow, that Durham County provides us with the library staff. So we're going to work to make sure that these people have opportunities with local government, to include working with our partners in the city fire department to see if there's opportunities to transition into the fire department with the Durham City. It is an interest that we keep those folks in a retirement system because they also have communicated to us that that's their biggest concern between that and health insurance.
How many people are being transitioned?
9.
9.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. There's one more person online. Would you like to introduce yourself and say who you are? Can you hear me?
My name is Jeff Leckie. I'm also a member of the board. I'm the secretary of the board, and Kyle did state what our board represents.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments? Commissioner Jacobs?
Thank you, and I appreciate you all being here to, help us understand this transition and the reasons why. I have a few questions. One is, how has this change been communicated to residents that are served by the Lebanon Fire Department is one of my questions. Number two, I would appreciate getting a map of, what are the actual geographic areas that each fire district serves and what the ISO rating is. So I guess it sounds like the number of employees is 9 that this is impacting, who obviously want to stay, keep their state or their benefits and keep their retirement, and so would be better served continuing to work for the city or the county. What is the plan? I would like to know, what is the plan then for being able to hire people, because obviously we know this is a challenging area to hire for, and what will be, are the salary and the benefit levels going to stay the same or different when you're hiring new people? And just what is your plan to actually be able to hire people with doing it the way that you're going to do now? And I guess if your current ISO rating is a 3, which is outstanding, just how are you going to maintain that going forward?
So with our current staffing level being at 9 county employees, we've already started implementing a process that will allow us to hopefully be able to seamlessly bring in employees that we lack after the transfer. If we have any county employees that choose to transition to the entity, obviously they would have a job and we would just backfill the open positions. We have a competitive salary. Obviously the benefits with the state retirement we're not exactly able to keep up with, but as far as salary base for our what will be our new hires or transitional employees, they've been notified of their pay and benefits, and we're raising the part-time salaries to attract more part-timers as well to backfill positions.
I had also asked about the how this was being communicated to the residents who are served by the Lebanon Fire Department.
As of now, with our planning for staff, we're not sure that the residents are going to notice any impact. Our ISO grade will not change due to our staffing. I'm not sure of a plan of how we would communicate with this to the residents, but they wouldn't be impacted.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say I would like for us to be informed. I know this plan is being transitioned in. What is the date that the transition will be?
It's effective December 1st.
Okay. I would like our board to be informed about, you know, the filling of the positions and also how I mean, because I've been contacted by residents personally who are concerned. And, you know, obviously the work that you all do is so critical. Everybody wants to know that if they, God forbid, have a fire, that, and especially with the high rating that you all have been providing, impacts people's homeowners insurance. So I know the people, I've heard from people in the community that are concerned. So I would
point out that Lebanon will continue to have full-time employees, as we're the only Durham County fire entity that has full-time employees. So they should not be aware of any service change, as we will continue to have the same number of staff that we currently have, and with the potential of being able to add more staff to provide for their needs.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacobs actually kind of asked my question. My question was going to be around the benefits and salaries of just making sure, you know, if the way the contract is signed, reading it over, seems like the county was providing the retirement benefits and making sure that those aren't lost and is taken into I'm sure it's taken into consideration, but just wanting to have clarification on protecting those benefits for the workers.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioner Burns?
I agree. What you all do is critical, and I can appreciate all of it. But here's where the rubber band is kind of snapping in my head a little bit. So I have not been contacted by anyone, but some of my board members have. In the event that we're trying to work, and I want to thank you, Mr. Fire Marshal, for working to make sure that folks can transition, because I know what it would feel like if I'm worried about my benefits. So that's 9 people. Let's just say 5 transition, right? Say 4 transition and they go elsewhere. That's 4 or 5 that you don't have anymore. And then I'm thinking about the time it takes to go through a class for fire and rescue. So I hear you saying that there's going to be no impact, but if 4 or 5 people leave, what is your recruitment strategy to kind of sort of fulfill those? Because we talked about the back end of, like, these folks might leave, and maybe I'm missing something, but, you know, effective December 1, are we even planning to contractually fill those? Because those contractual positions have to be qualified. I mean, even, you know, our volunteers have to be qualified. So I get we're preparing these people who are leaving. What are we preparing for recruitment? That's the question. so that there is no gap in critical services?
So we've asked the current standing county employees make their intention known with an August 1st date. So that will give us time to be able to run a process to hire certified firemen so we can have them on board and ready to go for the December 1st date.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Carter?
Yes, thank you for your service on the board, and I know that volunteer boards like yourselves put a lot of time into trying to analyze all aspects of these situations. And I personally don't feel like I have the background knowledge to, second guess your decision here. And the things you've presented make sense to me. I know we're all somewhat, disappointed that a person has to lose a great benefit like the retirement plan with the state. Nonetheless, I hear what you're saying about operational costs, and my question would be, was your decision impacted at all by your current tax rate? What is your current tax rate?
Chief Canada or either Jason can probably, I think it's 12.5%. I'm not.
It's a 0.1251.
Did you all consider raising the taxes in order to cover your current costs?
We did consider raising taxes. As I stated in the board statement, we have a rural fire tax ceiling of 15 cents.
Right.
That would have put us close to that ceiling.
Right.
And any more longevity or merit increases would have potentially put us over that tax of 15 cents. Since we're capped there,
I see.
We continue to keep. Our board cannot continue, our operational budget cannot continue to keep up with the raises and merit increases that are currently being provided by Durham.
I see what you're saying. You might have been able to cover it temporarily, but
correct.
As the county continues to raise salaries. Right, okay. And you are the only one currently who is operating with full-time county employees? The only volunteer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we're the only volunteer in Durham County. They're the only fire department within Durham County that is operating with full-time employees of any type.
Okay. This will put you in line with all the rest, then, of our volunteer fire departments, this move. Yes, I'm getting nods.
We would still transition into a full-time staff. They would just work for the entity and not for the county. So we would continue to be the only fire department within Durham County that has a full-time staff.
I gotcha. Okay, thank you so much.
Just one other question. What's the demographics of that particular area, Lebanon district? What's the number of residents that live there?
Jason, do you have that number?
I had it in work that we did for your ISO rating, but it may take me some time to try to dig that up.
Okay. If you could just let us know I'd like to know the number of residents that live there. Is it growing or is it decreasing?
There was a 1.02% increase in net revenue in the tax district between fiscal year 22-23 and 23-24 projections. So it's not necessarily growing at expansive rates. We're seeing more of the residential development in that area and not necessarily any commercial development. But it seems very stagnant in its growth.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Hearing none, thank you so much. And thank you again for your service.
Hi, good morning. If I may, I do have those numbers for you if you'd like.
Yes.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Cindy Wilson. I am president of Lebanon Board. Thank you very much for allowing us to speak. The number currently right now is around 19,000 for the Lebanon jurisdiction.
And that's residents, not businesses.
That is correct, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So our next item, Commissioners, is 230393, Durham Transit Work Program. And we have Ellen here, Beckman here,
To present this item to us.
we got okay, you're right, we got the governor's study first. And then she will also present the work program. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Ellen Beckman, Transportation Director, Durham County. So we got two transit items on the agenda this morning. First is the Transit Plan Governance Study, the next steps on that, and then the work program. So starting off, the governance study, as you know, we have developed a new transit plan approved by the board last month. And along with that, we are setting up a new framework for how we implement the plan and monitor implementation. That's been done through this effort called the governance study. The Board of Commissioners approved the interlocal agreement that is the overall governing document for this effort. And that document calls for a few other documents. So we have that on the agenda today. The Comprehensive Participation Agreement, which is between the Durham County, the Go Triangle Board, the DCHC MPO Board, and the City of Durham. And then secondly, the Policies and Procedures Manual that includes 3 documents: financial policies and procedures, work program amendment policies, and staff working group bylaws. So with that, there is a presentation that's going to be provided by Adam Howell, who's our consultant for the study from Atkins. He'll be presenting virtually.
All right, thank you, Ellen. And Madam Chair, I want to just do a quick sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Sure.
Perfect. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be in front of you today. It's been a good 2-year journey with all of you and your partners. And so I'm going to jump right into this presentation, as Ellen said. Quick outline for today. I want to remind everybody of our accomplishments that we have achieved together since the fall of 21. Review the major outcomes of the Comprehensive Participation Agreement, which I will then shorten to CPA. Discuss some of the major outcomes of that come out of the Policies and Procedures Manual. Talk about the road to adoption for both of these pieces, and then finish with our action requested taken from your agenda. This study set out on a path, as you remember, back in the fall, to create a clear and operationally efficient governance structure that ensures that Durham and Orange County's priorities are funded and implemented with the county transit tax to gain further community trust. Several of you remember, you all sat in on small listening sessions with each of you as elected officials, as well as we did many with staff in the early part of fall 21. And then we thought it was prudent to go ahead and host a pointed elected official workshop solely for your benefit to talk through transit funding, transit planning, and how things could and should move forward with you and your partners in the region. We then worked through to facilitate 5 separate staff workshops that kind of built on each other, looking at critical needs to support this overarching governance framework and all the policies and documents that you have either adopted up to today or you are about to review and consider for adoption approval. And there's been a series of several formal and informal legal reviews by your county manager's office and attorneys, as well as all of your partners involved. This process has also enabled, as Ellen said, 2 brand new transit governance interlocal agreements for each of the 2 counties in the western part of the triangle. And so I want to congratulate all of you on that as a huge milestone to move forward. Moving forward into the CPA, I do not want to kind of highlight the details because those have been provided to you in your packets, but what the CPA essentially does is it invites local municipalities in each county to be a party to transit plan implementation efforts. It also works to recognize the ex officio or non-voting members of each county's staff working group as implementation partners. By doing this, it reminds all of those as a part of official transit governance implementation efforts to require further coordination with those ex officio members through specific project agreements when appropriate. And so moving forward, just some quick highlights on the CPA. Critical elements here do include better definitions so that everybody's on the same page. There's further staff working group details incorporated. There's a specific article that defines clear eligibility for county transit tax revenue funding. There's an emphasis put on how to define and make sure everybody, again, is on the same page about supplementation and supplementation. And then there's a series of built-in waivers of non-compliance for partners looking to conduct business and implementation with the CPA in the next couple of years. I don't want to walk through all the details on this, but the one thing that stood out to me that make sure that you brought to your attention was the eligibility for county transit tax revenue funding. So there are requirements for inclusion on how each annual work program is to be developed, which Ellen will be presenting on for the next fiscal year. Implementation efforts, which essentially means that there is a requirement for any project to be supported by a project agreement, whether you are bundling several or doing one standalone. The partners sought that it was important, and we found a way to make it work effectively to define the grace period for legacy projects. And so those projects that have been on the books for years before all of this governance process took shape, that there is a 1-year clock for all active projects prior to the start of fiscal year 24 to formally enter into project agreements, or they may be subject to losing their funding eligibility. Partners also asked to conduct a formalized capital improvement program review, and essentially they're looking to look at those projects that may be sitting out in the future horizon years, that may be taking up space in the funding models, but those projects are no longer applicable. So there might be that opportunity to free up some funds in the forecasted years to then better reallocate to projects that fit the public's need. There's also a final better clause here, good faith effort to make sure that everybody's coordinating and moving forward for the purposes of the benefit of public transportation and serving the public's needs as a whole. The financial policies and procedures is quite a lengthy document that includes all of these items here on the page. I will read through these, but there are several slides there for the record. For detail as you wish, we can go back and reference if needed. But this extensive document does include operating fund balance and liquidity policy and guidelines. There's a series of billing, payment, and reimbursement policy and guidelines that helps project sponsors make sure they know how and when they can seek reimbursement from the tax district administrator, which is Go Triangle. There is a series of extensive debt policy and guidelines outlined to note how the tax district is to take out and seek debt to support projects within Durham County and how the oversight of that is to exist. There is a section on how to address and continue to facilitate increased costs of existing services. A recently adopted carryover policy is reincorporated into this. A relatively new bus operating cost per hour policy to make sure that everybody's on the same page on how to manage those costs and escalate them into the future. And then officially incorporating Go Triangle's standalone financial policy and procedures so that all partners understand how the tax district functions in their fiducial capacity. Again, these are some of the finer details. I don't want to get into the full details, but one of the pieces here to make sure that I bring to your attention is the capital fund balance. The policy here of the Triangle Tax District is to maintain a minimum capital fund balance. And that target fund balance is 5% of a 10-year rolling horizon timeframe. But for Durham County, there's also the goal to maintain a minimum of $10 million in addition to the 5% CIP reserve, which is outlined in the Durham Transit Plan that you have recently adopted. There's also, like I said, a series of debt policy and guidelines. And the one thing I wanted to point out here is that any debt sought to be issued by Go Triangle is reviewed and recommended by the staff working group, which you as the County Board of Commissioners has oversight partnership with Go Triangle. And so you will then have the opportunity to review those recommendations and approve and authorize also by the Go Triangle Special Tax Board pursuant to state statute. Moving forward, just a couple of additional minor things for debt policy and guidelines to make sure that your debt service coverage is protected, to make sure that nothing kind of falls below certain thresholds so that we are financially healthy. Then moving forward into this new section of the financial policy and procedures is a series of work program amendment policies. And these kind of help to set and define a clear threshold for how staff developing each annual work program need to bring forward minor or major amendments, and how those are to be facilitated and discussed and brought forward to the appropriate governing boards, and or to be facilitated by county and or regional partner management. I'm not going to read through all of these definitions, but they are clearly laid out here and agreed to by all the partners. And so there are a series of minor and major amendment definitions. The threshold is clearly cut dry right in the middle between how they are defined. So all partners working together know when and how and what needs to be brought at the appropriate timeline, so there's no confusion across how to make sure that there's transparency and efficiency in the process. Additional details, again, there are 3 cycles to allow for these amendments. There will be a public review regardless, no less than 21 days for each quarter, so that they're aware of what's happening with the money being spent on public transportation. And the staff working group administrator will be facilitating the collection and dissemination of all amendment requests through the appropriate documentation protocols that will be defined and designed by the staff working group as a partnership. And additionally, as a part of the Policies and Procedures Manual, there is an updated and more robust staff working group bylaws and operating procedures, which is essentially to help serve the parties and partners function, elect officers, and foster collaboration throughout each year to achieve the annual work program development needs for transit plan implementation. There are still a series of elements and items that the staff work group will need to be facilitating to bring to your attention over the coming months, such as implementation calendar, making sure they get draft work programs to you and the public in a timely fashion in the spring of each fiscal year. So moving on to the final part of the presentation, the road to the CPA and Policies and Procedures Manual adoption. Durham, Orange counties, as well as DCHC MPO and the Triangle are being asked to review and take action to approve the CPA, as well as those 3 components of the Policies and Procedures Manual. The local municipalities, and with respect to Durham County, is just the city of Durham, are being asked to review and take action to approve the CPA as they operate and function within your umbrella of the Transit Governance Framework. And that recommendation action has been taken, and their city council will be taking action later this month to final approval of their CPA. So the action requested is here on the screen. With that, I turn it back over to Ellen Beckman and Madam Chair.
Thanks, Adam. So this is the bureaucracy of how the transit plan is going to work. There's a lot of details here, and I want to recognize Adam's work helping us through this over the last 2 years. Also, the other partners, at Go Triangle and the City of Durham and the DCHC MPO participate in a lot of workshops to go through a lot of these details. So these 2 documents are packaged for your consideration of approval at the regular meeting. If there's any questions that we can answer, I'd be happy to do that now.
Elena, you probably feel like you just delivered. This, and you both, Adam, this has been ongoing for 2 years. You've been working on this, and I just want to say thank you so much for all the hard work and hours that you put into this, both of you and your team. Because you've brought this to us before, and we've sent it back, and we back and forth, and you've made the changes necessary, and we appreciate the work. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to the board. Any comments, questions that you may have? Commissioner Jacobs.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ellen, Adam, everyone who's worked on this. I, since my time as the county commissioner, I can't think of anything similar to this, where literally an entire body of policies have been created around some process or funding source. So this is truly a great achievement. I think it's going to be really transformative as we move forward with how we are using our Durham transit dollars and being addressing all the past issues that we've had. But, you know, this is really very solid foundation. I mean, just the complexity of it all is, it's really fantastic. So I have a few follow-up questions. One is, are we going to have a place on like a web page where all these, you know, policies are going to be housed and publicly available?
Yes, yeah. There's a lot that we need to organize and put together, including like where that information should be housed. There's a few different websites that have transit plan information, but it would be better to have it in one consolidated place for our use and for the public's use. So yeah, we'll be working on that. I can't say exactly how it's going to happen, but it's something that, you know, will take place over the next year or so.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that we have something that, you know, Durham County Transportation, a web page or whatever makes sense, but that has the plan, the tracker that we're funding, and, you know, these policies. It seems, you know, we good to have everything easily accessible to people, but also for all of our partners too.
Yeah.
Right.
And a cheat sheet with all the acronyms.
Yeah, exactly. And a cheat sheet, for sure. Yes. Yes.
What is it?
Really
All
good
the
point.
alphabet soup.
Yeah, and the only thing I would suggest, I noticed another item that's on our agenda is the changing of the name of TJ Cog to the Central Pines. So this document refers to TJ Cog in many places. So I was going to suggest that being updated. And I do have also a question about, I know we have in our financial policies, policies related to the capital funding, but do we, I guess I didn't see anything specifically, was there any discussion about how we really maintain a separate fund related to capital funding? Because I don't think we're doing that now. Do we have two separate funds? Like I'm thinking about Durham County. We have separate funds for operating funds and capital funds. Are we going to be doing that with the transit dollars? Because I think it's very misleading to people when they see, oh, you're putting money into fund balance. And it's like, no, it's because we're stockpiling money for these future really, really big capital projects like BRT or rail or buying a bus. How are we going to do that? Have we talked about that?
Yeah, so, you know, the Go Triangle's the bank, right, for the transit plan. And they do, it is my understanding that they do maintain separate capital and operating funds. There's a separate capital and operating ordinance that's approved with their budget that includes all of these funding sources. So,
okay. But like, for instance, in our in our current work plan, right, we have, like, I forget how much, is 15 million or something that is going to go in FY24 into fund balance. But do we have a way of clearly saying, well, this is not just fund balance, this is going into the capital fund for future projects? Or, you know what I'm saying? Does this make sense to you? I mean, this is just what's in my mind, but.
So I believe it is called the capital fund balance. I don't know if Stephen Schlossberg is on. I'm not sure if he's on, but he's Go Triangle Finance, and I'm looking at the materials for the next item, and it is labeled as Durham Capital Fund Balance. So
Okay.
I believe it is.
Okay.
I believe that's how they track it all.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to be really sure, that we're very clear, especially for the public.
Yeah.
To understand. This is not just fund balance. Like this is how we're saving up for these really big projects.
Yeah, for the Go Triangle Board, we have those same questions, Commissioner Jacobs, to be clear where the money is going and what it's going for. So we've been in those conversations too, and we really stress to be especially for new board members, that the clarity needs to be in all of the operations that we do and everything that's done with Go Triangle, that the public needs to know where the dollars are going and what is being done for, to the point that one of the questions that we've raised is when a new board member comes on, how they go through the process and what information is being shared so that people understand what the responsibilities are and where the dollars are going and how they can report it back to the community. So that's one of the things that Go Triangle will be working on, to be more clear about how that's operating. Commissioner Carter?
Yes, I want to thank Ellen and Adam for this amazing work. It's definitely an improvement. I would think everyone would agree. And I had a couple of questions about the capital fund balance. Could you help me understand why? Could you help me understand what it is? I get what it is. Can you help me understand what the rule for it is, that the target fund balance will be 5% of a 10-year rolling horizon time frame? And Durham County is also adding an additional $10 million to that. I'm sorry, I just don't know what that means.
Ellen, you'd like me to?
Yeah, that would be great, Adam.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Essentially, it's to protect, in case, let's say that there's an economic downfall, or you want to make sure that there's a reserve in place to make sure that you can continue to deliver the projects that you have promised the public. And it gives you a reserve, not just in case of an economic downfall, but let's just say inflation just takes over projects, and you want to make sure that you can still pay for other projects that are on the books currently in the current time frame. And so you've got this, the 10-year rolling horizon aspect is what was defined to make sure that if we've got $100 million programmed and planned out over the next 10 years, and then that number goes to $110 million starting the next fiscal year out for the next 10 years, you just want to make sure you got 5% of that $110 million available in the target fund balance, plus the $10 million that Durham County is requiring for capital purposes.
So the 10-year,
it's kind of a safety net.
Yeah, that I get. But the 10-year rolling horizon, which was not, I didn't know. So that's the total amount of money that's in the capital plan for the next 10 years. 5% of that would be the target fund balance. Yes. And why did Durham County add another $10 million?
That's a good question, Ellen. That was coming from the transit plan development process.
This is Claudia Hager, Deputy County Manager. This is part of the lessons learned too when we did light rail. Liquidity throughout the process, the concern if there were cash flow issues that came up, a cushion was there, and the county did not have to unexpectedly look at its own reserves to cover it. So I would say that although there have been recent conversations, part of the reason staff prioritized this as a place of strategy was a result of lessons learned and the challenges with capital planning and inflation and supply chain issues. There will always be unknowns, but at least there is a strategy to help cushion projects as you work through them.
We're being more cautious. So Orange County's policy is that their target fund balance will be 5% of the 10-year rolling horizon time frame.
Yes, and that's the same in Wake County too.
And that's Wake County.
Yeah,
We felt like we needed
million.
to add another $10 million. I don't know. Yeah. I hate to hold on to too much of the taxpayer dollars in our savings account. our bank account that we're not spending. When people are asking, we want money, you know, we want projects more quickly. We want to see the results of them. And we are building that approach into our transit plan that we're about to adopt.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So I should add, a lot of the financial policies that are written down in here were discussed when we worked through the development of the new transit plan. It was about 18 months ago at this point. We had a series of meetings with Go Triangle Finance, Doug Carter, the financial advisor, to go through the financial model in detail and confirm some of these policies. So that what's written in this policy reflects how the funding was modeled in the transit plan and is a result of that discussion that we had.
Something different about our financial policies versus Wakes and Orange counties that leads us to believe we need an additional $10 million.
So there was a concern about the sales tax forecast, and that that should there be a recession, you know, should the sales tax not continue to grow at the rate that's forecasted, that there should be an additional reserve here. And so that's how I recall that's how that $10 million additional was developed, was as a kind of revenue reserve in case sales tax didn't realize the way it had been forecasted.
Okay. And could you say a little bit more about the increased cost, the ICES, the increased cost of existing services policies? I just think that's a really important section, and would just like to hear a little further explanation about that, please.
Yeah, I can start. So our current interlocal agreement, or the previous interlocal agreement that was approved back in 2013, set aside half of the $7 vehicle fee for the increased cost of existing services for the city of Durham. It said only the city of Durham was eligible, and it was capped at half of the $7 fee. In developing the new transit plan, we maintain that. So that is what's modeled, that half of the $7 fee would continue to be eligible to the city of Durham. And so this policy just maintains that for now. However, you know, earlier in our process, we did look at different ways to do that. You know, there was a request from Go Triangle to consider that they would be eligible for that. So there's a description in there. We wanted to memorialize that discussion and the options that had been developed. However, we are not changing it. You know, we are being consistent with the transit plan at this time. And, you know, there's been some other changes related to Go Triangle revenue that we'll maybe talk about a bit at the next agenda item. So we decided that now was not the time to consider making changes. I do want to add that the intention of these financial policies is that when we do our 4-year revisit of the vision plan, like, we will model the new plan, and it would be an opportunity to tweak or change things, you know, as needs arise or as we learn things. You know, it's not that these are never changing. I mean, we, of course, intend for it not to be changed all the time. What we hope is that it is looked at, you know, with that vision plan update every 4 years. Yeah.
So if any of us have a matter of discomfort with any of these policies, we can see how it goes, right? Over the next 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and we did, like, a lot of the stuff we deliberately put in this document and not in the interlocal agreement because we wanted a little more flexibility. Like, the interlocal agreement, we really hope we don't revisit for a long time. But these policies are more things that we may tweak and add to as we, you know, go through this process.
We've got about 5 more minutes. Is there any other questions that we have on this item before Ellen moves to the next one? Okay. Hearing none.
Why don't you move on to the FY24 Durham Transit Work Plan?
Okay, thank you. I got a few additional people here to help present on this. So this is back before you. You had a presentation last month, and it was referred back to the staff working group. So the staff working group has met again and has recommended a new work program. So the action before you is to receive this presentation on the recommended work program. The new interlocal agreement now requires that the Board of Commissioners approve this. And then secondly, related to one of the projects in the work program, Catherine and I are going to give an update on the Durham Bus Stop Improvement Project and what types of goals we are setting with the request for increased funding for staff support for that project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Doug Plachinsky, the Executive Director of the DCHC MPO.
Great, thank you, Ellen. It's my pleasure to be back here with you this morning. Just going to go through our presentation quickly. It's very similar to what you received last month. The 24 transit work program covers the fiscal year coming up. It's existing and new transit, public transportation operations, services, and projects, programs dedicated to Durham transit tax revenues, and it's administered jointly by Durham County and Go Triangle. Current transit fund projects include lots of Go Durham bus stop improvements, quite a bit of continued service expansion, which our partners are working hard at between the county, the city, and Go Triangle to continue expanded services. Ongoing Go Durham Better Bus projects, and then potentially improvements at Durham Station. There are also a series of capital improvements recommended at the Go Triangle's Nelson Road Bus Maintenance Garage. New projects for next fiscal year include continued Go Durham Access study and pilot implementation, Corridor 805 accessibility stop improvements, a park and ride lease at Woodcroft Park, or excuse me, at Woodcroft. I should know that. I'm from Durham. It's not Woodcroft Park. A bus speed and reliability study that will be working to identify transit corridor improvements, including potential buses resembling trains or bus rapid transit lines that DCHC will lead on behalf of the partners. A Durham County Transit Tracker website that the county will help develop. The participation for DCHC MPO staff to continue functioning and supporting the staff working group, Go Triangle Tax District Administration and Transit Plan Administration, and some increases to staffing costs there. Durham County Transit Plan Administration increases. Durham County taking on the Employment and Educational Access Project sponsorship, and then Durham County also taking on the role as staff working group administrator. The projected revenues next year are a little over $42.5 million. They include the half-cent sales tax, 2 different registration fees, and a portion of the vehicle rental tax. We propose spending almost $14 million of that on capital expenditures, including infrastructure and vehicles, and planning for future capital expenses. Another almost $14 million in operating expenditures, including administration, new or expanded transit operations. And then at the end of next fiscal year, we project to add about $15 million in fund balance to bring the fund balance, projected capital fund balance, up to around $103 million. Split out by agency, Go Durham and City of Durham have $15.6 million. Durham County will work with about $673,000. Go Triangle has $10.2 million, and DCHC will have $1.1 million for a total of that $27.6 million. Our request is to approve, or the staff working group provided a recommendation to the Durham County Board of County Commissioners to recommend approval of the 23-24 capital work program, or capital and operations work program. Thank you.
Okay. So that's the general overview of the work program as a whole. Now, Catherine and I will be giving a presentation specifically on the request for the Durham Bus Stop Improvements Capital Development staff. Is there an... It's in the agenda item, sorry. It's called Transit Plan Accountability Framework. Okay, great. Thank you, Monica. Apologize. We usually don't have two presentations in one item. I think it's a little confusing. All right, so this is a good opportunity to explain how the transit plan and the work program relate to all of those governance documents that we just reviewed. So just a quick overview. Big picture, right? The Board of Commissioners and the two other boards approved the transit plan. That's the long-range vision. And then on an annual basis, there's the annual work program, which is the specific funding for the projects in that plan. Moving forward, well, today, the work program includes project sheets, like there's a sheet for each project. We are going to look at modifying that to add goals and kind of accountability metrics to those project sheets so that's clear what will be reported and what the intention of the projects will achieve. So next year we'll add that as an addition to the work program. And then the interlocal agreement and the comprehensive participation agreement require project agreements between Go Triangle and the sponsoring agency, and then sometimes DCHC and sometimes Durham County, depending on the situation. So the project agreement, is where the entity is promising to implement the project and report back on implementation. So that project sheet will be attached to that agreement. So those are the items that are kind of approved at a board level, and you'll see them moving forward. Then the project sponsors will work to implement the projects. They submit quarterly reimbursement requests, and they will report back those reporting metrics twice a year. We'll use that information to populate a website, the Transit Tracker, that's funded in this year's work program. And, it will be how results will be reported to the boards and to the public. So the intention of all this is then the results, are used to inform our decision-making on the transit plan updates and the annual work program. So just to recap, Durham Transit Plan approved last month, has a vision, has kind of three main themes: improving the current system, more projects sooner, connecting the region with quick and reliable service, and better experience at stops and stations. Further on in the document, there is a chapter on implementation and performance metrics. It looks like this. This is a starting point for all of those metrics that we intend to report on. I do think that we will tweak this, as we look at specific projects and what makes sense. But this is kind of a starting point of what we intend to report out to you and the public. So there are two kind of classifications of metrics that we're going to be tracking. There's the implementation metrics, which is, did we do it? Right? Did we add the service? Did we fund the staff? And then secondly, there's performance metrics that are more about like how it affects the public transit system as a whole. Are we getting the expected results? Like, is it increasing ridership? Are we providing faster service? Are we, providing more accessibility to jobs? So kind of high level goals that we have in the transit plan. I do want to emphasize that performance metrics are often influenced by a lot of different things, that are beyond our control, right? COVID affected ridership, for instance. So there are some things that we may not be able to affect, but we want to make sure that we can see that the results of our investments are improving the transit system, or if we need to pivot and go in a different direction. All right, so now I'll turn it to Catherine to talk specifically about the bus stop improvement program and how it fits into this framework.
Thanks, Ellen. So over the past few months, Go Triangle staff has been working with Ellen to begin to operationalize the performance monitoring and reporting goals that are in the transit plan, basically starting with this Durham Bus Stops Improvement Program as an example project to work towards what Ellen was just describing. We envision that in the upcoming fiscal year, we would work with the county as well as support the county working with the MPO and the city of Durham to apply these types of principles across all of the projects that are in the work program and then get those memorialized into the project agreements that Ellen was describing as part of that process. So you heard me say this at this meeting last month. In many ways, the Durham Bus Stop Improvements Program has been very successful in the past 4 years. Since 2020, we've installed ADA accessible landing pads, sidewalk connections, other bus stop infrastructure at nearly 80 bus stops throughout the county, and we're actively working on about 200 more all throughout the county. As Ellen mentioned, ridership is one way to measure success on programs. For the 79 stops in that map on the left, the completed ones, these stops are some of the busiest in the system, serving nearly 4,500 boardings and alightings by Go Durham passengers each weekday in 2019. That represents nearly 20% of the activity outside of Durham Station. As you know, this program directly benefits Durham's residents who are most in need, with more than 85% of Go Durham riders having household incomes below $35,000. Minority and women business participation is another metric that is specified in the transit plan. We'll work with Ellen to develop standardized reporting for this for all contracted services that are funded by the work program each year and for the plan overall. As an example, for the Durham Bus Stops program, we're managing this piece in a way that has resulted in more than 90% of the construction work part of the projects, more than $2.5 million awarded to date, going to minority and women-owned small businesses. We regularly engage with the MWBE community, and we put on an annual conference to let firms know about our upcoming opportunities. We actually have one coming up this month. One exciting thing from my perspective about what Ellen's trying to do here is really to get the performance monitoring and measurement that we're doing as part of the transit plan to align with and support continuous process improvement, looking each year at those metrics and identifying opportunities to improve. That's something that we already do, but we really want the monitoring and reporting that we do for the transit plan to support that and work together with that and help us do it better, rather than just being this extra thing on the side that you have to do that's not actually helping the program get better each year. So for us, just as examples, back in 2021, Go Triangle and the city of Durham entered into an ILA that streamlined a number of activities related to the bus stop improvements program, eliminating city permitting fees that were being paid previously, adopting a standard form of easement that allows the real estate acquisition process for those slivers of property needed for the bus stops to go a lot faster, and formally designating people within Go Triangle and the city responsible for the design and review and acceptance process for bus stops. So that's improvements that we made back in 2021. There's still more that we can do to streamline and improve the city approval process. We also have a lot to do to streamline the NCDOT approval process. About half of the stops in Durham County are on NCDOT roadways, and so that means that an encroachment agreement with DOT is needed for each and every location. So there's things that we can do and that we're already working with them on over the past 6 months, have really leaned into that to identify how can we develop design criteria for those locations that will help the development process for us and the review process for them just go a lot more quickly. We've also identified, as we talked about last month, an opportunity where increasing staff at Go Triangle can help make this program go faster and support more improvements being delivered sooner, and in some cases at potentially a little bit lower cost compared to some of the oversight services being contracted. In terms of the implementation metrics, we're working with Ellen to develop a monitoring plan for the program that's going to easily track the outcomes of this program, as well as other projects in the plan, as well as looking at the impact of the operating funds for the project implementation staffing. The county would then incorporate those metrics into that dashboard that Ellen mentioned will be developed later this year. The staff working group would collaborate to consider how much detail is appropriate for staff level monitoring and then the public-facing dashboard, working with sponsors to determine what can and should be tracked and developing recommendations for what's the right amount of detail and information for each type of project. The basic financial metrics would be reported for all projects, planned versus actual expenditures, the MWE participation for contracted services, et cetera. So we have a couple charts here to show what some of this could look like. For the bus stop program, again, as an example, this chart shows the number of stops planned to be completed each year and the number of stops actually completed. As we've discussed before, we've been stuck at around 25 stops a year being delivered in the early years of the program, despite having committed capital funding to support a lot more than that. That dip in FY23 that you see there in the actual bar, that's reflecting that the year is not complete. There's 11 stops that have been completed so far this year, and then there's 14 more that are under construction right now, on track to be completed in the next couple months. With the targeted investment in additional staffing for FY24 and the other process improvements that we're working on with the city and DOT, we're confident that we'll be able to ramp up to 40 stops completed in FY24 and be on track for 50 in FY25, and hopefully be able to support our goal of getting to a regular cadence of constructing 75 or more annually within a few years. The increased level of production is really critical to being able to follow through on the transit plan's commitment to delivering more projects sooner. This one is an example chart that can be used for operating projects, such as the staffing support, basically showing the budgeted funding each year and then what the project sponsor actually spent. This is an example for Go Triangle's project implementation staffing. You see a dip in the actuals in FY22. That's because of turnover that resulted in vacancies. So those salary expenses were not used for the whole year. As I'm sure you're aware, it's a really tough time to be able to maintain staffing across many industries, many types of jobs. We've been fortunate to be able to bring on really excellent new team members to fill those vacancies in the past year or so, but turnover, especially on a lean team, is disruptive to project progress. And having more funded positions is going to help us minimize the impact of that turnover when it inevitably occurs. So those are just a couple example graphs. I'm going to hand it back to Ellen. She's got a couple more slides here, and then we'll be happy to answer questions.
Great, thanks, Catherine. So those were the implementation metrics, going back like performance metrics. Hopefully we improve the bus stops. Customers are more satisfied, right? It shows up in our customer satisfaction results. Hopefully will show up in increased ridership, which will then in turn reduce emissions from the transportation system, and things like improving safety near bus stops. So those are the types of performance metrics that we'd like to track that would be relevant to this project request. But again, want to just emphasize that there are many factors that may influence this, like COVID or safety, particularly, speed limit setting. That's kind of outside of the control of the transit plan, but affects the safety on our roadways. So that's what we will do. And then, going back to that kind of first slide, we have a lot to do to operationalize this. We are developing the templates for these project agreements. We're going to be developing the templates for those project sheets for what they will look like in our work program moving forward. We need to go through every project in the work program and kind of do this kind of deep dive and look at what we want to track, what our goals are, and establish how the reporting will occur. Our comprehensive participation agreement says that agreements must be in place by this time next year for all projects. And then, as you know, we're also developing that website transit tracker to display all this. So there's a lot to do to operationalize this, but hopefully this example project gives you an idea of how it will all fit together. So going back to the agenda item as a whole, the request is for the Board of Commissioners to consider approval of the 24 transit work program for this year.
Okay, thank you so much. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you for all of your work. I just have one question. Talked about the MWBEs. Can we get a list of the companies that you are referencing?
Yeah, we'd be happy to provide that.
You mentioned 92% MWBEs. I'd just like to have some idea of the companies that you're referring.
Yes, we'd be happy to do that, and we'll work with Ellen on what that reporting looks like going forward. I'm sure we can provide, in addition to the numbers, the list of firms that was engaged each year, just so that we have that going forward.
That'd be great. Thank you. And Ellen, the other question I have may not be in this presentation, but we talked about the lift, and that was on the Go Triangle's agenda. So I'd like to get some clarity around that before we vote on the 28th. So is it part of this plan or not?
So the work program funds Durham Microtransit as one of the projects in the work program. And this work program maintains that funding. It's consistent with the Durham Transit Plan amount of funding. I think it's around $670,000 a year or so. So it is a project included in the work program. Now, the cost to operate that service for the past 6 months has greatly exceeded the budget. And so Go Triangle is requesting changing some of the program rules to make sure that we are within the budget of the program and that we're focusing on the goal of that project. The goal of the project is to provide transit service where fixed route bus service isn't available. The transit plan has tremendous improvements in the fixed route bus service. There are lots of frequency, time of day increases in our transit plan and in our work program. microtransit's intended to kind of fill the gap where a fixed route bus isn't financially sustainable and viable. So, so it's within the project, I guess. The approval of the work program approves the budget for that project.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear about the funding that Go Triangle was asking for, if it's in your work plan, or is that a different conversation we need to have?
It's in the work program.
It's in the work program?
Yeah. Like the work program reflects Go Triangle's requested budget for that program, for that project.
Okay, and there are no adjustments that need to be made?
The adjustments, so, and Catherine could probably speak to this, but there are adjustments being made to the program rules and how it operates in order to make sure that the budget is being met, you know, not being exceeded, and that the project is focused on the goals of the project to provide that service where fixed route bus service is not available.
Okay. So can you get me some information on that and highlight that issue for me? I'd just like to be clear what I'm voting on.
Yes, we can provide some follow-up information on that. As Ellen said, just to provide a little bit more detail, this program has been operating in an initial pilot phase this year. And as Ellen said, the budget, or excuse me, the expenses on the program quickly exceeded the budget for the current fiscal year. So we've done an evaluation of what was causing that, and what we see is that the current program, a lot of the trips in the current program are duplicating fixed route service. They're starting and ending within close proximity to where fixed route buses are running. And so we're moving forward with program changes that would go into effect for the upcoming year that would right-size the program and align the program with, as Ellen said, providing access for transit deserts rather than duplicating the service. So we've done the pilot. Pilot was successful. It told us a lot of information, had a lot of people riding the system, and then we'll be shifting the program in kind of the second phase of pilot to ensure that the program can operate within that budget that's in the recommended work program for the upcoming year.
Thank you. Great. Commissioners, questions, comments? Nothing on this side? You're still thinking, okay. Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you. Well, first, I have to acknowledge with all of our partners sitting here, fantastic news that we got today. So congratulations, Ellen, as the lead on the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant, which we received from the Federal Railway Administration. Fantastic.
We're excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and really, really excited. Ellen, when we found out about that grant, she, within a very short amount of time, reached out to all of our partners who wrote letters of support and collaborated, the MPO, Go Triangle, North Carolina Railroad, NCDOT Rail Division. Everybody came together to partner on that, and all of those partners will be really critical in the next phases of it. But this grant is very important for the future of any type of rail that we do.
I think the press is excited too. They are emailing us like crazy.
Yeah. So I've been waiting with bated breath on it, so this is very, very, very important. I don't want to underestimate just how critical it is that we were able to get this and be able to do this study. It's the first step for that us then applying for the funding to actually make the improvements. So congratulations. Thank you. So I have a few questions. One is we are losing the $1.4 million around funding from the 50% of the vehicle rental tax. So I guess we're just absorbing it at this point for this year's budget. Has there been any discussion about the impact of that going forward?
Yeah, you're correct. So what caused the work program to be referred back to the staff working group was a letter received from Go Triangle stating that 50% of the rental car tax that had been allocated to the Durham, Orange, and Wake transit plans was going to be removed starting July of this year. So that decreased the funding by about $1.4 million. For our 24 work program, we can absorb it, and that's what is being recommended through reducing the transfer to the capital fund balance. That only applies to this year. We have not now looked back at the transit plan as a whole and seen how it affects our projects long term. That's something that we will have to do and evaluate if it causes any need to change projects that are programmed, or looking at the revenue assumptions and the financial modeling if there are changes that should be made there. But just with this time frame of approving the transit plan and approving the work program and the timing of the sending of that letter, we just really have not had the opportunity to evaluate it as a whole.
And Ellen, Steve is on if you'd like additional information on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Catherine.
Our financial person is on now, if there's more detailed questions on that.
Okay. And I really, really like the accountability network, the performance metrics that are tied directly back to the vision. And again, I think that is going to be, having a web page or whatever will be really important to have that information there. I really would love to see in the future what the project agreement templates look like, because I think that's going to be also important information to have for the public. And I hope that when we look at those, we're going to understand what we're getting for our money, especially related to administrative type costs. Because I feel frustrated right now when I read the current sheets. I don't feel like I understand, whether it's related to real estate or legal or financial or whatever, administrative. Even with the transit emphasis corridors, where we're spending a lot of money, like over $6.4 million, almost the same as what we're investing in improving the routes, the actual bus route improvements. So I think that's going to be very important how those are structured, and the project agreements. I know that's going to be a process over time.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last thing is how the map that is in the plan, how are we getting that out to the community? Information about the new routes that are coming on, just seeing that map. Are we going to do paper, or is it going to be digital? How are we going to be getting this information out to the public?
So the transit plan, is in the process of being approved. We'll work on making sure that is, put on a website, and that, map will be in there.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I want to make sure to emphasize that the transit plan is kind of the high-level vision plan.
Yeah.
And we'll be generally following it. That's our intention, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But especially on bus routes, there's a lot of details that still need to be studied and developed of exactly where the bus turns and where the stops are. That process is actually underway in what's called the bus plan. And public engagement on that is going to start, I think, in August, right? Yeah, of this year. And there's a lot of direct engagement with riders there because it's on the specific services that they use every day. I believe, there's going to be a combination of ways to engage bus riders
paper, in person, virtual, all of the above. So we'll be working with Go Triangle and the city of Durham on that. You know, they are the operators, so they are doing more of that, you know, individual route level engagement.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, how will the public?
We're going to have to move.
Okay. All right. I just had my last question. There were very detailed public comments that we got. How will those be followed up on?
We can update. We can provide a response to all these folks with the recommended transit plan. See if there's any further information that's needed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've just got one more presentation before we have to meet the bus. So, thank you for your presentation, and this will be on the consent agenda on Monday. Okay. All right.
I just wanted to quickly say, I think this is excellent work, and I'm excited about it. Not only do I believe we're going to, that this work program we're about to approve is going to help us achieve the high-level vision of improving the current system, more projects sooner, connecting the region, and better experience at bus stops. I'm excited because I think not only is it going to be easier for the public to understand, it's going to be easier for us to understand. I think the project sheets are really going to help. The performance and implementation metrics are going to help. And I just thank you so much for all of your work on this. And I'm very pleased and happy to approve this plan going forward for this year, the work program.
All right, thank you so much.
Great,
All right.
thank you.
So our last item before we have to go to the courthouse, commissioners, is 230394, the opera update, and Claudia will be coming before us to present that one, our deputy county manager. So Claudia, is 30 minutes going to be enough for you? Or probably 25, because we have to be outside at 11:45. Is that right, Monica?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We will move very quickly.
I'm trying to be intentional.
What would be a meeting without ARPA?
All right.
But good morning, everyone. We trust that you're well, and we'll move swiftly through the items because we will have follow-up conversations. So this is an introduction and some quick updates. I have our partners from the city, Deputy City Manager Bertha Johnson and Community Development Director Reginald Johnson with us today. We have so many different projects that we're working on, so I feel like we just need a tunnel that will flow between the both entities as we work through all of these things, but grateful for our partnerships. Just some real quick updates, and I did send an email late last night that just shared the framework. Quick updates, we are moving forward with the original ILA that the board approved back in May, and the City Council will approve that ILA on their June 20th meeting. The City Council will also approve an ILA that will come to us for the Carver Creek Partnership, and the board will entertain it on June 26th. Okay? So there's lots of efforts thanks to the leadership of the manager's office in both attorney offices, the city and the county. As you can imagine, it's lots of coordination. So just wanted to bring that update quickly. At one of the recent meetings, staff recommended the board consider additional, the staff recommended that the board consider the potential investment of ARPA dollars in projects that have funding gaps that the city is moving forward with. Some of these projects you've already heard about, and today we'll just introduce it with some follow-up conversations at subsequent meetings. And again, the strategy is to be transformative in our use of ARPA dollars, and as well as collaborative in nature. Those were some of your guiding principles that we've tried to continue since you've established them. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps on some of the other actions, and with more activity happening through the summer and going through the fall. So at this point, I will have Reginald share, and in the presentation, he'll give some high-level overview. We knew this would not have a lot of time, so as they say, we cut to the chase. And so we're going to go ahead and just give the highlights on these projects. In February, if you may recall, when we went through this process before, we shared links to all of the project details. We will do that also for this, and we'll send that all to you if the board desires to get more information later this week. So, Reginald, I'll let you go.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Greetings to all of you. Reginald Johnson, Director, Department of Community Development for the City of Durham. What I've been tasked with, just to share with you at a high level, affordable housing projects that are still in need of funding. First of all, let me begin by thanking you once again for the contributions that you've already made to affordable housing in Durham. Know that this is very much appreciated. These projects are in addition to those that we've already talked about, and I'll just run through them. So there are 4 projects that are shovel ready to go. And some of them are already going. One is Aqua Rehabilitation, and I'm going to go through all of these: Aqua Rehabilitation, Harriet's Place, Sandy Ridge Station, Southside Phases 1, Phases 3 and 4. Just a little bit about Aqua. That's the Affordable Community Residence Association. Many of you are probably familiar with the project. It's at Cook Road in MLK. This is a apartment complex that services persons with disabilities and persons with HIV and AIDS. And they had come to us and applied for funding for rehabilitation, just because it's dated, old, and needed to repair some water issues and those sorts of things. And we have updated total development costs. You will see that the initial request committed is the money that we already have in the project that's actually going now. And then because of inflation, the supply chain issues, they're in need of another $125,000 to just finish the units because of the increasing cost as they are getting into it, and there's some water issues and that sort of thing. And so we just have some additional data there for you, so you'll see the per unit total development cost as well as the per unit subsidy. This is a repair project. And many of you know where the location, we just included a map in this presentation, so you'll recognize if you're not familiar where it is, at the intersection of Cook Road and MLK. Then there's Harriet's Place, which is Reinvestment Partners as a developer with 15 units. All of these units will be 30% AMI or below, which is $21,500 max household income for that household of one. The total development cost is $5 million. The city has already put $1.6 million into the project. There's a gap of $1.6 million. And then you have the total subsidy request, as well as the per unit total development request and the per unit subsidy. So that's another project. And many of you know where this is located. Then there's Sandy Ridge Station, which is a 4% low-income housing tax credit project at Old Oxford Road out at Bragtown. This is 132 units. We have the breakdown in terms of the number of units in the AMI that's served for those 132 units. A whole updated development cost of $34 million. We the city already have $5 million into the project. The total subsidy increase, same reasons due to inflation, cost increases, and interest rates increases, 1.8 million. And then you have the per unit total development cost as well as the per unit subsidy. And many of you know where Sandy Ridge Station is located. Then the final project is actually two projects that's really combined into one. This is Southside Phases 3 and 4. Many of you are familiar with 1 and 2 that are already standing at the end of, by South Roxborough. But we are looking to build two developments. One is build them simultaneously. One is 100, the total is 100 low-income housing tax credit units. And one is a 9% low-income tax credit union. The other is a 4% LIHTC. And you can see that the money that we already have in it in terms of initially committed is about $7.7 million. The total cost increase is about $8.5 million. And mainly that's due to interest rate and, again, supply chain. The numbers that we use here for tax credit purposes were submitted in 2020, and so you can see what happens between that time. And so one of the things, this is an important project for us. The first two projects, we did receive national recognition on phases 1 and 2, 132 units, then another 86 units. This one stands to be, have some recognition as well. This is the first time the the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency is considering what we call a twinning project, where they're looking at two projects, one at 9% and another at 4% on the same site, and for a total of 100 units. And I share with you the breakdown in terms of the AMI units that these are 60% and below, and of the 60% of the units, 14 will be 30% below, and 9 will be 30% and below. So I just wanted to share, that's a quick overview. Of course, you know where that is located, not too far from downtown. And so in the summary of the projects that we just listed, that's a total of a gap funding of $12 million. And I'll stand for any questions.
I told Mr. Johnson that was a big number. And, but, you know, ask and they will give. And so as the community as a whole, we wanted to know what the number was. And as we, the county and the city looked at their ARPA dollars, if there were places for potential partnership. We're not, again, not asking the board for any action today. We'll entertain questions. We will give additional information, and we'll go from there.
Okay, Commissioner Burns. Don't look worried. I like y'all. How you doing, City Manager Johnson? Well, Director Johnson and Deputy City Manager Johnson. Okay, my J&J, there we go. So mine is really quick. One, you know, I know everybody's heard me, and I guess Commissioner Jacobs said we want to do as much as we can do for housing, right? So, you know, as soon as people in the community hear that, they come see us with a paper bag and a ski mask. And then they sent you two beautiful people, but I still see the paper bag and the ski mask. My only concern, every other project I'm good with. I've made no qualms about it. I have some concerns about Harriet's Place. It's just, it is what it is. You know, they put in $100,000. I was at the meeting when you all had to do, I think you all were deciding to put the elevator on the outside of the building because it's on the historic registry. They couldn't put it on the inside. So I got to see and hear people talk about the project. It's one of those, it's different. When we build very new things, it makes sense to me. Like the $10 million we gave you all, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to bring 1,200 houses. I'm like, 10 million, 1,200 homes, I'm here for that. I've made no qualms about it. You know, there's another body has approved 18,000 homes in this last administration, many of whom can't move into them. So I'm invested in making sure that what we vote on in here is stuff people can move into. What y'all brought me today is stuff that people can move into. My concern with Harriet's Place, that is a $5 million budget for 15 units. even with construction and all the new construction we doing for an affordable housing unit with studios, you're looking at $400,000 a unit. We doing more than that with 5. The math just don't math with me with that one. They studio apartments. The bathroom is at the end. I got questions because this does not look like a 30% AMI situation. And then when the mayor, I got to go back and look at the video, when the mayor asked on camera, I think it was her, who would live there, I felt like I remember, and I can stand to be corrected, that they said, oh, these individuals that work are a part of this organization. I don't feel comfortable, so somebody needs to clear it up for me. I don't feel comfortable sitting on this body voting to support something that already has residents pre-selected. I want this thing to be open to anybody that's 30% AMI. If we have set aside something, I got a little bit of a problem with it. I'm not saying that we have, but somebody needs to clear that up for me because that's what I heard that night in the meeting. So, and then, when I sit here and I look at what reinvestment partners put in, but then I look at how much money they got, yes, for the public, I have pulled your 1099. I have pulled your 990, excuse me. So the total project cost is $5 million. The city put in $1.6 million. That was months ago, so I don't know why they didn't come to us. Congressman Price, I secured the community project fund for another $1 million. North Carolina Housing Finance Agency put in $600,000. PAC West Bank put in $100,000. And then Reinvestment Partners put in $100,000, and now they're coming to us for $1.6 million. I'm just curious why Reinvestment Partners, with all the money they have, why they haven't put in any additional money. And that's not me saying no. I'm just saying every other project y'all have brought us, I have not had this litany of questions about it. So if we're gonna spend $5 million for 15 studio apartments that don't even have bathrooms, I got questions. So, am I wrong?
Well, Commissioner, I would say that, one, I wasn't at the meeting that you're speaking of, so I can't speak to
Save yourself.
Details, but I'll be glad to get some additional information on that point.
Thank you.
So that's okay. So I'm gonna speak to the project itself because that's what we're interested in. One, it was a competitive application process that yielded Harriet's Place. Two, we were okay with it in terms of our analysis because one, it is a historic building. That is critical that we're trying to save an important community in part of neighborhood revitalization. We do have to spend more on average when we're talking about that type of building.
Absolutely.
And then the other piece of that, these are 30% units, and financially, this is a rarity because we would not build a building with 30% because it would be underwater all the time.
Good point. Good point. You give me what I need, Rich. Give me what I need. Because I'm gonna be honest. I reached out. Let me just say this. I reached out to Reinvestment Partners. Their answers were not this good. So you saving them right now.
Oh,
yeah. And I mean, he can come in here. I'll tell Peter Skilling to his face. I wasn't satisfied with none of the answers I got.
Okay.
They want to say, well, let's go on a tour. I know what the building looks like. You're not gonna tug at my heartstrings. I appreciate y'all trying to revitalize it. I appreciate the steps that y'all made to put the elevator on. I get all of that. But, you come to me asking for money and I have questions and you can't answer them. Now we got a problem.
Yes,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. You have answers.
Yes, ma'am. I do to the extent that I can. And we understand the cost of the project is on per unit basis, which is what folks typically look at. But for us who do this every day, and the economy that we're in and trying to maintain 30% AMI units, this is what you're going to get when you get the number. This is what the numbers are going to be.
That is a beautiful answer. I yield to my colleagues. You need to send you a thank you card.
Okay.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Well, thank you both for being here. And I'm just so thrilled, really, about the partnership between the city and the county because we are getting a lot of things done together. And I want to thank you, Claudia, and all of the staff that has been working together on a lot of things behind the scenes. I mean, this is how we get things done for our community, and I appreciate the partnership with Carver Creek. Carver Creek is looking like a really good deal. It's $126,000 per unit. When I look at these per unit costs, wow. And I also want to thank the city for, I don't know if you saw the great video that came out last week. City public information did a really short video highlighting the city and the county project. So that was really nice. Yeah, I have similar. So my big question is, I know we've already done the ILA for, the 10 million, that's done. But I'm really concerned about how we go beyond the 30-year affordability. I mean, just looking at what's happened now with Carver Creek, we're stepping in because we, with the city, with our projects, the 300 and 500 East Main Street, our agreements with those projects are that after 50 years, those are 50-year affordability restrictions, but after 50 years, the county has the right of first refusal, so that they will first come back to us if the developer doesn't want to keep them affordable anymore. I'm wondering, with these projects that you have presented to us today, is that something that we can look at? Because, 30 years is just not enough. It's just, it comes, and then all of a sudden, we're putting people at risk. And frankly, we're all investing public money in those. So just wondered about your thoughts about us looking at incorporating that into these, if any of the ones that the county may decide to contribute to, would that be a possibility to look at that right of first refusal?
We'll have to look at that. I'm not prepared to answer just yet. I mean, one of, so for the ACRA project is with our funds, in terms of no complexities with the low-income housing tax credit project with it. So we would have possibly some flexibility there, and also with Harriet's place. I would be a little bit sensitive about the Sandy Ridge Station and South Side. So I'll go to South Side first. One of the things that we found so this is also 30 years, but one of the things that we found, and the reason we started on this long trail with McCormick, Barron, Salazar, is because that's their business in terms of preserving affordability. We've seen projects where they have in their track record that they've had for over 30 years. And so that's the reason we chose them in the beginning. And so we'll have to look at what does that mean, because we expect there's a procedure that happens when 30 years comes up, but we expect it to remain affordable. So we'll have to look.
Okay, but yeah, I would appreciate just knowing what, for each of these, what is the current plan, and then if there is the ability to ensure, longer term. Okay. And then, for instance, for the south side, it says that there are 56 units, 14 are 30% AMI. What is the stat? What will the other ones be? I would like to understand.
Which one are you referring to?
Well, for south side 3 and 4, the slide, it says how many are 30% AMI, but what are the other ones?
Oh, it maxes out at 60% AMI. I just didn't put that on.
Oh, okay.
So this is a low-income housing tax credit. Okay. All of these are affordable units. The top the household income is 60% AMI.
Got it.
I was just sharing with you the number specifically to 30.
Right, okay.
But everything else is 60.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Out at 60.
Okay, well, that's an easy one to answer then. And I want to just, I agree with what, my colleague has said, that, yeah, you look at the per unit price, and it's definitely very high for Harry Tubman, but so it's good to have the context of that. But I think that one in particular, we would want to make sure that has longer term affordability involved in that one. So, but thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I was just going to echo Wendy's comments about appreciating the partnership and the opportunity to participate in affordable housing development and work with the city on this. This is an area that you all have a lot of expertise in, and really appreciate the partnership and our own staff helping to bring it forward to us. And my only question really was about the last one. You already answered it, about the 60% AMI for Southside. I didn't know that was one of the rules with LIHTC, so glad to hear that about this one. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of the work that's gone into this. I'm really glad that we're going to have this partnership because I remember when we had our board retreat at Duke, that was something that's like stuck in my mind of when staff presented about, you know, the 300-500 East Main Street is our staff and all of us are really passionate about affordable housing, but we just don't have the capacity to do all of that work the way the city does. So being able to have a partnership is going to be really great, and I'm looking forward to how it's going to support our staff.
Thank you. Two questions. One concern as around continuing upkeep, the maintenance on the building, and weatherization. Do we have enough funds between the city and the county and federal for weatherization? Where are we with those?
You're talking about not for these projects, just in general?
In general for the weatherization, but in any of these buildings that we are doing jointly now, who will be responsible for maintaining these buildings?
Okay. So the responsible entity is the developer.
And the developer.
So for example, in the case of Standard Ridge Station, it'll be the Bradley Developers and their management company. That's part of the agreement that we would have with them.
For how long?
Oh, for the existence that they have the project. So, okay. For example, McCormick, Barron, Salazar on South Side, there's a agency that manages. That's one of their partner corporations. That's the Upkeep Now. That does the Upkeep Now. And yes, it has the latest. It's green. I can't give you the number.
Okay.
But that's part of the arrangement. One of the reason we chose McCormick, Barron, Salazar is because they have a history and a track record of doing upkeep very well. We actually visited some of their projects. The mayor, 2 mayors ago, led a delegation to several sites so we could see the work that they have done, and they have a history and a track record of maintaining their.
Okay.
So I would.
Yeah, because that is so important.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I would just say this, when we're looking at low-income housing tax credits, one of the challenges that we've had is that the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency has changed their structure over the years to allow for more money in terms of the pro formas to be set aside, which is a good thing. There were some of the units, one of the challenges we have with older buildings, there's not enough money that was set aside to be able to keep up with the upkeep.
Okay.
Now, as part of the structure, that is a constant.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And what about the weatherization of that we have for the rest of the year?
So I would have to check on it. We don't have any funds for weatherization. We do have funds that we give for Habitat for Humanity for repair for seniors and those households with disabilities. But in terms of, and those might include some weatherization, but we don't have funding for just a weatherization program.
Interesting. I thought that would be in the city's budget, and you're saying that it's not.
No, we do minor rehab and substantial rehab. Those programs are going to start at the end of the summer.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, different conversation here. All right. Thank you. Anything else?
Just 2 quick slides. I think I covered some of the items just a moment ago about the ILAs and as it related to Carver Creek, as well as the first $10 million commitment. We'll come back to the board with 2 additional ILAs related to digital equity, as well as the cultural arts focus. We will also, over the next several board meetings, execute remaining ARPA Community Grant Fund RFPs, those contracts. It was great hearing some of the comments made by some of our cooperative extension colleagues, because they were able to share just the complexities of doing those contracts. So we're moving fast, but the process is the process. And lastly, just a listing of areas that will come back to the board with RFPs. We'll not go through the list, but to your point, Commissioner Howerton, there is one about expanding home repair resources, and that would speak to some of your questions about weatherization for many of our seniors or families that are in certain income challenge. It may be a challenge. You know, for my own self when a repair comes up, and so for those who are on a fixed income or limited income, we want to preserve those properties so that they can stay in their situation and make it so it doesn't become worse. Yeah. So we're exploring those as well, and we'll continue to give updates on ARPA, which is a great thing because it could have been a different way. So we're glad again that Congress did stick to its original
didn't
not
try to take our money,
the dollars. So
yeah.
So that's all I have, and we'll come back to you in upcoming meetings. And thank you very much.
Thank you and Reginald for being here this morning and being our partners on the city side, and we just keep on getting stuff done. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Claudia, for your presentation and all the work that you do around this. We appreciate it. Okay. You got
Claudia, the RFP, the RFPs, will you come back with recommended amounts for each of those?
Yes, ma'am. We will come back with recommended amounts and for all of the different categories. And we just wanted to give the list and say we'll follow back up with the board because we need to look at a couple of things. One, for those that may require sustainability beyond ARPA funding, we have to keep that in the forefront if it's a board priority. And then for some of the others, such as the day center, some of the nuances around that we need to flesh out further before we come back.
Thank you very much. All right. So we are going to break for an extended lunch, going over to the courthouse, and then come back afterward to resume with our budget.
Chair Howerton, we're actually adjourning the meeting because this is the end. And so when we come back, it'll be a new meeting.
It'll be a new meeting.
Yes, ma'am. So we'll just adjourn.
So we're adjourning this meeting.
Yes,
then
ma'am.
for the record, let me just put adjourn. All right.
So Deborah has secured a van with general services. They'll be picking up the commissioners out front, manager and Attorney Andrews. You can ride if you would like. But other than that, we'll be walking down to the courthouse.